What does a fictional Alabama courtroom, an Alaskan mountain race, a giant marathon medal in Little Rock, a costume San Francisco 12K, and a Florida race that begins before most people are even emotionally awake have in common? Well, my friend, they are all part of the same American running, reading, and racing road trip. This July, Extraordinary Strides is celebrating 250 years of the United States, the way that we know best. Not with a textbook, not with a ranking, and definitely not a requirement to read all 150 books that'll be featured here. But we will explore this country through stories, places, races, and the connections we make when we get curious about all three. Hey friends, welcome back to Extraordinary Strides. I'm Coach Christine, and this is part one of 50 states, 250 years, running, reading, and racing exploration. Over the next 5 Wednesdays here in July, we're traveling alphabetically through all 50 states. For every state, I'm bringing you 3 books, an iconic or literary anchor, one popular pick, and maybe more of a wild card. It could be a thriller, a memoir, a YA novel, but the moral of the story, if you will, is that they will all be set in that specific respective state. And because this is Extraordinary Strides after all, every state is also going to get a racecation or runcation shortlist. Now, I'm not going to just include marathons. You're going to hear everything from 5Ks and road race traditions to a little bit of mountain suffering, some relays, beach weekends, and events that require actual crew spreadsheets. I have 2 of those currently on my desktop. So my friends, what I ask of you is to just join me for this exploration and know that you don't need to run every race. You don't need to read every book. Just soak it all in. Pick a book maybe from a state that intrigues you. I hope it maybe leaves you with a race or 2 that you want to add into your someday list or your bucket list. And let me know, what story did I maybe miss that I should add, or what starting line should I have definitely included? The point again is just to really enjoy and explore the United States of America through some pages and maybe a few miles. So my friend, are you ready to get your suitcase packed and get this trip underway? Because we're going to start in Alabama. It's fitting that our first stop asks us to think about stories, voice, and the difference between a place that's familiar and a place that's being understood. Alabama gives us courtroom drama, front porch storytelling, civil rights history, of course, Space City, frontier running, caves, and even a beach marathon that lets you pretend that January does not have to bring winter. Our iconic literary pick is To Kill a Mockingbird, and I want to name the obvious. It's beloved, it's influential, it's taught in schoolrooms all over the US, and it's still highly debated, which means it's even more reason to add it to your reading list or maybe even revisit it if it's been some time. We will make our way through these pages through Scout Finch's childhood and his view of Maycomb. Harper Lee takes us into questions of justice, racism, empathy, class, and what it means to see your own community through a different lens. The book is rooted in the world of Monroeville, Alabama, and the 1962 Gregory Peck film is still part of its cultural shadow. So from our popular pick, I'm giving you a little bit of fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. This is your warm but not shallow option. It has food, friendship, it tackles a little bit about aging, memory, and chosen family. The stories that women tell when no one else is taking notes or even really paying attention. It became the 1991 movie so many of us know, but the book has more room for race, queerness, and the different generations around the Whistle Stop Cafe. And yes, it includes recipes, which of course is one of the reasons why it's definitely on my must-read list. Then our wild card is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. A quick but important clarification, Homegoing is not going to be a neat Alabama set novel. I'm including it because Gyasi was raised in Huntsville and because the book gives us a larger lens for the American story. It follows 2 branches of a family across centuries, from Ghana through the legacy of enslavement, incarceration, migration, and memory. This is the pick when you want the episode to go beyond what book takes place here and toward what histories do we carry into the places that we call home. I'm aware that I'm just scratching the surface of all of the great books that were set in Alabama, but my friends, we have a whole lot of states to get through. So without further ado, let's get into the run side of things, right? We can say, we've already alluded to it, that Rocket City Marathon in Huntsville is the obvious go-to anchor if you're planning on running the 50 states, because you run through Space City. You get to see rockets in the Space and Rocket Center. You move through the Botanical Garden lights and finish indoors in the Von Braun Center. It is not perfectly flat, but it is a Boston qualifier with a practical, well-supported personality. In the official race materials, they list about 700 feet of gain and early December typical temperatures in the cool range. Still, it is Alabama, so pack layers and be a bit flexible about what may actually come about from race day. As we make our way, though, through this list, I'm excited to join in and to add something a little bit different, something that I think you can't find in every state, right? And that's Race to the Cave, because it is an opportunity to actually race through a cave. I want you to know that it does have a little bit of time frame shifts. There's a Race to the Cave 5K, and there's another one by the same race director that has longer distances. It is trail. There are cave logistics, but as a concept, it is a trail race that leans into North Alabama limestone and cave country. And of course, that's a really Alabama way to earn a finish line story. It's not about a PR. This is about being the person up front who says, oh yeah, well, my race, I went through a cave. Then there's the Big Beach Marathon, and that gives you the Gulf Shores. Paved state park trails, a beachside finish near the hangout, in a very different Alabama from Huntsville. It's flat, it's fast, it's coastal, and it has challenge options if you feel like adding a 5K to your half or a marathon weekend. If you run it, make your real plan around the beach wind, not the elevation, because that beach wind can play quite a bit into things. So just be prepared. Now, my friend, again, whether you choose to tackle any of these races or read any of these books, I would say that if you want your pairing per se, I would add the Big Beach Marathon to your bucket list of races to tackle, and then read Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. Because of course, when you're thinking about a really traditional Alabama kind of story, gives you a little bit of an Alabama opportunity to dive a little deeper. This one kind of has it all. So my friends, I am looking forward to hearing if you've read some of these books or if you've run these races. And if you're thinking, you know what, neither the books or these races are on my to-do list, but I am going to make my way to Alabama. Where should I go for a run? I'm going to suggest that you try to check out either Huntsville's downtown, or you check out the Gulf State Park's paved trails and Gulf Shores. So again, you can combine a little bit of rockets and a little bit of racing if you so wish, or maybe just go out there and get a good coastal jog before you start your vacation. Making our way to Alaska. That is quite the difference, right? But as we say, we are going to tell you right here and now that scenery is what it's all about in Alaska. It is vast, it is gorgeous, but it is logistically demanding, and absolutely not interested in pretending that you can wing it just because you brought in a cute hydration vest in your carry-on. So we really need you to bring it if you're going to train for these Alaskan races. But before we dive into those, let's talk about our literary picks. Right out of the gate, we're going to go Into the Wild by John Kerker. It's a narrative nonfiction about Christopher McCandless, whose journey into the Alaskan backcountry. Well, it didn't end quite with like that fairy tale ending, but the book is fascinating, it's moving, and it's fiercely debated, especially by Alaskans and outdoors people, who rightly point out the wilderness is not a metaphor, it's an actual place that has consequences. It is a great discussion pick if you want to talk about risk and preparation, privilege, solitude, and the stories that people project onto nature. Now, for a more accessible but still incredibly emotional Alaskan read, this may be my absolute favorite of this author's. No, let me take it back. It is my favorite book from this author, Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone. It's a family that moves to remote Alaska hoping for a fresh start, and the book gives you long, light, deep winter gives you community, there's isolation, there's survival, but lots of very big feelings. It is extremely bingeable, but I would add a content note that it does have a little bit of trigger if you just need to tread lightly around the conversation of DV. There's also then The Snow Child by Fowen Ivy, which is read this with a blanket and let Alaska be magic kind of read. A childless couple in 1920s, Alaska builds a little girl out of snow and a mysterious child appears in the woods. It lives halfway between hard homestead reality and a whole lot of fairy tale. But for runners, it's the kind of book that makes this long a quiet, one-to run. It feels like a story instead of a chore. Now, for those races that I was talking about, the Anchorage Mayor's Marathon is our approachable anchor. Great foundation to add to your list. It's held around the summer solstice, and that alone is a reason to go. Near endless daylight, fresh air, and a route that lets you really take in that real Alaskan trip out of that marathon weekend. It is Boston qualifying, even though maybe a little bit more challenging. It is very community forward, and it's the kind of race where you should plan extra days rather than fly in Friday and disappear on Sunday. You really want to be able to be there and soak it in. Now, Mount Marathon is a different horse of a different color, if you will. It's completely different. It's approximately, it's not even a full marathon. It's actually 3.1 miles. It is a 5K, but in that 5K distance, it has nearly 3,000 feet of elevation gain. I'm out of breath just thinking about it. The slope averages around 34 degrees, and the route contains loose rock, a little bit of creek features, ledges, and again, a punishing descent as well. The official site requires mountain experience, and first-time racers have to complete the course during their training. It is lottery controlled, and the 2026 odds were roughly 1 in 3 shot for women and 1 in 5 for men. This is not a maybe I'm just going to power hike it kind of race. If you are going to tackle this, please, please, please proceed with caution and make sure that you know that you really have to put in the training to earn that finish line. Now, again, the third on our list is the Equinox Marathon in Fairbanks. And it is a historically tough pick. There's no doubt about it. It's hilly, it's rugged, it's tied to the autumnal equinox. And it's, though, for the runner who really wants more of a genuine Alaska course. It's not like any of the lower 48 marathons, which makes it truly unique. I do want to make sure that you're aware, though, that for any of your racing or running in Alaska, that you should take into consideration wildlife, weather, daylight, and the distance that needs to be part of your training plan. Again, Alaska has a very different scale. Treat local advice as essential, not optional. Now, if I was going to have a perfect pairing, if you will, if I was going to be your running and race little godmother here, I would say put that Snow Child plus the Mayor's Marathon on your list. You get that Alaska atmosphere, real adventure, and a race that invites you to stay long enough to understand why the locals keep coming back. Now, a little note, though, about Anchorage Mayor's Marathon is that while it doesn't necessarily sell out in minutes, as we're starting to see more frequently a lot of races having that, you do want to book your flights, rental cars, and your summer lodging really early because, again, it is peak season in that part of the world. So keep that in mind, my friend. Now, if you're thinking, I'm going to be in Alaska, I do want to get in a little bit of time on my feet, but I don't necessarily have the opportunity to sign up for one of these races, maybe try a non-race run like the Anchorage Coastal Trail. Be very careful, though, with wildlife, and that stands to reason anywhere that you go, of course. I'm a little curious. Is Alaska on your must-run list? And where would you choose to go? Why I love this particular series so much, and I'm so excited about it, is because we're starting to get a little bit of a glimpse of how vastly huge this United States is and how we really do have such really diverse landscapes and scenery. So from that beautiful Alaskan scenery, we're going to make our way down to Arizona. Still beautiful, but completely different. There's that desert heat. There's high altitude. We know so much about high altitude training that kind of is generated out of that running world. in Arizona. It is desert and canyon country, but it's also a state that has a lot of elevation and huge temperature swings. The indigenous lands and communities in a deep running culture. I mean, again, they're kind of legendary, Flagstaff and Tucson. Don't let the phrase dry heat trick you into thinking you don't need a hydration plan. You need to be very strategic with your hydration in Arizona. I know, because I've been there and didn't do a good job. But I'll tell you what we can do a good job with, and that's picking our books. First, we're going to start off with The Bean Trees by Barbara Kingsolver. She's a Tucson set novel about a young woman creating a life she didn't expect. It brings in the story of migration, again, a lot of chosen family, care, and the Sonoran Desert into the same frame. It's smart, but it's warm, and there's that literary without asking you to annotate every single paragraph. Next, we're going to go to These Is My Words by Nancy E. Turner. It's our popular historical fiction pick. It follows Sarah Prine in Arizona territory through hardship, family, danger, and frontier life. It has big book club energy, a strong main character, a historical setting, and enough plot to make you keep turning those pages. Our wild card, maybe you're going to disagree with me, but hey, this is my 50 state list. I'm putting this on here. But our wild card is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. It's set in historical Mica, Arizona, and it follows a teenage girl whose joy and individuality unsettle the high school that thinks it wants someone different right up until the different becomes truly inconvenient. It's a quick read with a very real question at its center, which is how much of ourselves do we have to edit to just stay included? Bonus, it became a Disney Plus movie in 2020 with a follow-up film, Hollywood Stargirl, in 2022. So this is an easy read and watch moment, especially if you're having to hit the treadmill a little bit as you prepare for your Arizona runcation or vacation. Okay, my friends, let's talk about those racecations that you can plan for Arizona. Lost Dutchman is the Arizona race that I would say should go on most listeners' must-do list. It runs in Apache Junction with Superstition Mountain scenery, road and trail choices, and a January date that gives you desert beauty without peak summer danger. The organizers' own testimonials talk about views, organized parking, frequent aid stations, and real community. This is the race to choose when you want desert without the chaos of that huge city marathon or those big city marathons. Now, before we go any deeper into this conversation, I should say that I really intentionally chose marathons or races, I should say, that kind of give us more of a specific aspect of that running community. So while I can't promise you that all 50 states will have races that are featuring specifically local race directors, it is my intention to try and do that as much as possible. So you may know that there are maybe more popular races in that area, but I am trying to call out more of the races that I think will give you more of a landscape of what's unique to that specific area, that community, and that experience. So without further ado, we're going to go to Mesa Marathon. It is your PR chaser option. It has a faster reputation because of its net downhill profile. Of course, it also has a great winter date that makes people fly in with carbon shoes and ready to rock their new Boston qualifying time, hopefully. It is still the desert though, so even though it's in winter, it's still sunny and it's still very different than sea level running, so be smart about those elevations and that elevation change. Now, finally on this list is the Antelope Canyon Ultra Marathons, and this is the Racecation wildcard. I know it's not an impulsive, I'm just going to run the Antelope Canyon Ultra Marathon, but because it's a desert trail terrain, there are lots of logistics to it. There is land access rules and planning around page lodging. The reason, though, I think it belongs here is that it lets you experience Arizona as a landscape, not simply a route. And the responsibility is to respect the land and the rules that protect it. So my personal Arizona pairing, you already know it's going to be Stargirl for that quick, accessible, fun option, then Lost Dutchman for that January racecation to kick off a whole brand new year. It feels special without asking you to survive 100 miles of canyon country. But you know what, my friend? If you're putting Antelope Canyon on your list, let me know. I'd be happy to be one of your crew. I'm cool with checking it out. I want to see it all, but I don't necessarily want to run that all. With that said, my friends, I will say all of these books should be able to be found at your local library. Please support your local library. So I personally am adding them to my Libby list. Nothing quite as wonderful as getting in some of these through an audiobook while you're out on those long runs, especially when you're training for these amazing races that we have here. Again, a little curious what Arizona book maybe you would choose that I did not have on my list. All right, my friend, if you are going to make your way to Arkansas, which is next on our list, you're going to definitely know that it's a little bit more of a surprise than you would think. It's not just a state that you drive through on the way to somewhere else. It has beautiful trails. It's full of Ozark terrain. It's dotted with hot springs and again, caves, ready to give you a lot of finish line with personality. So we're going to talk about some books that are set here. True Grit is going to be our anchor. Yes, it is the book that became famous, 1969 John Wayne movie, and then the 2010 Coen Brothers adaptation with Haley Steinfeld and Jeff Bridges. But the novel's worth reading because Maddie Ross's voice is just so good. It's sharp and stubborn and funny and absolutely unbothered by the men around her. She starts in Yell County, Arkansas, and the story moves outward from there. Next on our list is A Painted House, and it's going to give you rural Arkansas Delta life in 1952 through a 7-year-old boy watching adult secrets. Of course, there's going to be discussions of cotton labor, migrant workers, and violence that enters into his family's world. It is John Grisham without the courtroom, which may surprise people who only know his legal thrillers. It was also adapted for television. And then our wild card is maybe only a wild card because I didn't list it as that anchor golden literature that kind of belongs in that list. I'm just telling you, some of these books, it's hard to kind of categorize them. So just know that this is an absolute worthwhile book for you to add into your list. And of course, it is going to be I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, whose childhood in Stamps, Arkansas is central to this memoir. It's a foundational book about voice, racism, trauma, and survival. Also, I want you to know it's not an easy read. It's important because Arkansas is part of the emotional geography that shaped Angelou's voice. Now, as we make our way through the list of races to tackle in Arkansas, I can't think of any other race on this list that has a bigger medal. Not one. Truly. There are some big medals, and I know that a lot of you love them. But Little Rock Marathon is definitely at the top of the list. It's the state's big all-welcome race weekend. Multiple distances, huge medals, lots of fun community energy, and the race for every pace identity. And let me tell you, it was the race for every pace identity before we even knew about pace inclusivity being a thing. It truly is a great option for someone who wants a state to check it off maybe their 50 state lists, but they don't necessarily want like a major energy like Chicago or New York. They still want that really great running community. I think this one is something you should definitely add on your list. It's usually positioned around March, and you want to watch that registration timing because it definitely does book up. I mean, again, people love those big medals. If Little Rock Marathon isn't on your list, I'm going to suggest that you add in the Spa Running Festival because of the summit to summit angle. This lets you kind of tackle in hot springs as a complete weekend. You get running and trail and recovering and soak and repeat. The concept is frankly perfect. It's not an easy race, but it still really gives you a gorgeous view of Arkansas. I just want to remind you to confirm again all those different offerings there that are at the Spa Running Festival weekend. And last but not least, running from Yeti. Now, come on. It's a trail race, but it has a fun little personality to it. You do want to make sure that, again, you are aware it's going to have trail running, it's going to be playful, but it's going to be muddy, and you have to bring that adventurous aspect of your personality. So my Arkansas pairing, I'm going to tell you, lean into True Grit and then Little Rock if you really want that big metal energy. Now, if you are a trail person, I'm going to say I know why the Caged Bird Sings paired with Hot Springs in the Summit to Summit weekend, because it's going to give you a little bit of that deeper, slower, more reflective version of Arkansas. Now, if you're thinking, hey, I may be there, but I don't have any desire to run these races, I'm going to say just check out the Hot Springs trails. You could kind of say you're doing your own bit of running festival without having to sign up for a registration. Okay, my friends, we are making it to the big, bold, beautiful state of California. And goodness gracious, it could be its own episode. It has the most amount of road races and annual marathons of any other state in the U.S. It gives you such different scenery from North, Central, and South California. Such a tough one. So again, I know this one's going to be controversial because I didn't include maybe your favorite book that you feel really highlights and brings home that whole story of California, but it's a big state, so I had to do what I had to do. So my friends, while this was not easy, let's talk about it. We're going to go in with East of Eden. It's that big California book. It's set largely in the Salinas Valley. It has everything you could possibly ever want: family rivalry, love, cruelty, identity, faith, money, land, and the question of whether we are stuck being who we have been. Are we free to choose who we want to become? It's long, but it's iconic for a reason, right? So the 1955 James Dean film only covers part of the story. So if you're thinking, I don't need to read the book, I saw the movie, do yourself a favor. Add this to your Hoopla or Libby list from your local library, because it really is a good deep dive. One of my all-time favorite books, actually two of my all-time favorite books are on this list, but the next one is White Oleander. I was obsessed with this book. It was just so beautifully written. It felt like lyrics. It's more accessible though. It's a little bit easier. It's definitely more contemporary fiction than maybe East of Eden would be considered. Astrid is thrown into the foster care system after her mother is imprisoned, and she moves through different homes and different versions of herself. It's LA without the red carpet, but it's creative and beautiful. It's a little harsh. It's fractured, but there's a lot of constant reinvention. The 2002 film has a wildly good cast if you want the adaptation angle. It was good, but I read the book, so it wasn't as good as the book. The last but not least of my book choices, The Joy Luck Club. This book gives us San Francisco, Chinese American mothers and daughters, migration, love, grief, language, and all of the ways that family members can be sitting right next to another and still misunderstanding everything. For me, this book, while I am not Chinese American, I felt all of those misunderstandings and frustrations, maybe of miscommunications with my mother, that kind of generational difference. It's such a beautiful, beautifully, richly layered book. And of course, the 1993 film is a terrific companion watch, but I still think you should read the book. Because it really is so good, and there's so much more to discuss if you read it. But on the racing side, my friends, you can't have a California list and not include Big Sur. It is Big Sur after all. You get to run the Pacific Crest Highway and Bixby Bridge. There's rolling terrain. It's definitely the kind of course that people remember forever, considered wildly one of the most beautiful courses in the entire world for a reason. More often than not, this is not a PR hunt, though I know a couple of people who have PR'd there, which blows my mind. But it is an absolute scenery to be experienced. Entry can be competitive. It is lottery or charity or even qualifier if you're doing Boston to Big Sur. So keep that in mind. It is not an easy one to get on your list, but should be there. Beta Breakers is so on my list. It's everything I could ever want in one beautiful 12K. It's in San Francisco, and it's probably the most joyful and ridiculous thing I have ever seen. It has costumes and sometimes a lack thereof clothing. There's hills, there's crowds, there's some serious runners, if you want to call them that. There's a whole lot of casual runners and probably someone in a costume that hasn't ever run before that actual day. It's a race that can be competitive if you want it to be, but why would you want it to be? It's a celebration of being outside with thousands of strangers who are all of a sudden your very best friends. And then on this list, I feel like I should have a drum roll here. My third pick, so hard, but LA Marathon. It's that big city vibe, right? And it's a point-to-point through LA landmarks, which means it comes with logistics, but also gives you that wonderful feeling of crossing a city on your own feet. Now, again, a little bit to be mindful of here. California has both the highest and lowest points in the continuous United States. So we have Mount Whitney and Badwater Basin. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a perspective of how much different terrain, how many different experiences you can have, and how much different weather you could potentially encounter depending on. So I will say that if you are going to be out in California and you want to go out for a run, I think that San Francisco's waterfront is just such a beautiful opportunity, but Santa Monica is gorgeous as well. Monterey, there's really no bad place to run in California. I gotta be honest, I wish that I could live out there. It's just so absolutely gorgeous. Now, if you're talking about my personal pairing of what book and race would go hand in hand, the Joylet Club and Beta Breakers. It gives you story, it gives you depth, it gives you city, it gives you food, it gives you family, both the ones that we're born into and the ones that we find on the run. Costumes, hello, hills, and a whole lot of that California personality. I know Californians, that North California is different than South California. Just, you gotta let me try to get through this. But if you feel like I absolutely missed something that should be on our list, feel free to hit me up, leave me a message, leave me a voicemail. All you have to do is use an episode notes, that little bit of a function. I want to hear from you. Okay, again, we have a whole lot of states to get through. So I'm from California. We're going to make our way over to Colorado. Now, Colorado is where we talk about altitude. And then we talk about altitude. Also a gorgeous state, but you do need to be aware that if you don't live in Colorado, you are going to likely be impacted by that elevation. It's just physiology. Colorado has the highest mean elevation of any state in the U.S. And by that, I mean that it's not going to call you names and make you cry, though you may feel personally attacked by some of these races when you try to tackle them because of that elevation. But really what it means, or what I am intending to say, is that it is the state that has the highest average height of the route overall of any of the other states. So again, those race courses are usually much above the average sea level, which impacts that physiology. If you're looking for PRs or you're not quite sure how to adjust to that pace, you will need to when you go over to Colorado. But with that said, let's get right into those books. First and foremost is Centennial. It's going to be that big historical Colorado option. James Michener uses a fictional town to tell a sweeping story of the forces that shape a place: indigenous life, settlement, cattle, industry, wealth, environmental change, and the stories that people tell themselves to keep feeling entitled to the land. It is long. It's a big book, my friends. It's not a finish it by next Tuesday book, but for these long runs, it's a fantastic audio companion. With that said, we're going to make our way over to Plain Song by Kent Harif. It's kind of a little bit of a counterpoint. It is set in Colorado's high plains, and it follows a handful of people taking care of one another in imperfect but practical ways. It's short. It maybe is a little bit spare in comparison to Centennial, but it's beautiful. It's also became a Hallmark Hall of Fame film, which feels like a little delightful bit of trivia for a book that's subtle. Then we have dun, 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 The Shining. You know the movie, but the book is Colorado horror with a bit more family history, a lot more addiction of reading it like from cover to cover, lots of emotional context than the adaptation. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park has helped inspire King. Though the Overlook itself is fictional, this is the perfect book versus movie side conversation. Okay. When we're talking about Colorado, you can't miss out on BOLDERBoulder. It's the country's, or one of the country's greatest 10Ks. It happens on Memorial Day, just happened. It ends in Folsom Field. It has elite athletes, community runners, costumes, spectators, and enough energy to make a 10K feel like a major event. It is Colorado fun with altitude, of course, quietly holding a knife in your back if you're a sea level runner. So just be mindful of that. This one's grueling. It's punishing, but it has to go on this list, and that's Pikes Peak Ascent Marathon. It's for the person who sees a 14,000-foot mountain and thinks, I should probably go up that. As a Florida runner, I have actually considered this and thought, I think I'm crazy. I don't know how I would even train for that. It is hugely iconic. It is capacity conscious. It demands uphill and downhill conditioning. Don't forget the downhill. My friend, you're going to need to power hike at some points in this race because of the altitude. You have to respect it, and you're going to have to use a little modicum of a sense of humor if, again, you're a sea level runner like myself. So keep that in mind because it will remind you, it will humble you that the mountain is always in charge. With that said, we're going to make our way to the Rocky Mountain half. It's a bit of a friendlier mountain race doorway. There is scenery and altitude, yes. It also has an Estes Park style destination without committing to Pikes Peak. And, maybe you don't particularly want to own into that brand of suffering. My personal Colorado pairing, what's going on my must-do list, is BOLDERBoulder. It's accessible. It's soulful Colorado experience. And I would say the best book to read with it would be Plain Song or maybe The Shining. But, it's all up to you at the end of the day, right? So let me know what you would absolutely add as your must-do list. If you're going to make your way to Colorado and you want to go out for a run, I would say Boulder Creek Path, Denver's Cherry Creek Trail, or Estes Park with, that deliberate being mindful of your altitude pacing changing. Okay, my friends, from Colorado, we're making our way to Connecticut. It may be small, but it punches above its weight in literary history and road race traditions. It can give you colonial suspicion, post-war suburbia, and a feminist sci-fi nightmare. A Thanksgiving road race with distance that seems like it invented just to make Garmin watches confused. The Witch of Blackbird Pond is our historical anchor. Kit Tyler arrives in 1687 Connecticut from Barbados and finds a community ready to judge her on her clothing, her friendships, her independence, and her basic willingness to be a person in public. It is a Newbery winner. It is readable. It is bingeable. It's a great bridge for adults who have not read middle grade historical fiction in years. So a fantastic YA little dipping your toe. We're going to make our way from that to maybe something that has nothing to do with YA because it's a little heavier of a read. It is Revolutionary Road, and it is, of course, a Connecticut suburban novel. Frank and April Wheeler think they are meant for something more than the life that they have built, and what follows is a little bleak, a little sharp, and uncomfortable. The 2008 film with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet is an easy adaptation companion. Proceed with caution, my friend. Do not read if you're looking for a light, sizzly little beach read. It is not that whatsoever. Now, kind of a little bit along those lines, though, you have The Stepford Wives. It's short, it's a little creepy, it's satirical, and I will say that it's quite interesting. It's a woman that moves to an affluent Connecticut suburb where all the wives seem eerily perfect. The book is slim, smart, and ready to spark conversations about gender, labor, beauty standards, and what happens when having it all is actually a code for disappearing. I'm sure many of you are well aware of the adaptation with Nicole Kidman. Okay, my friends, after we've made it through those 3 books, let's talk about the must-do runs or races in the state of Connecticut. Right out of the gate for Thanksgiving Day, you are going to want to check off your Manchester Road Race. Of course, it does have an annual entry cap, so the registration is usually highly in demand. You're going to want to try to add this early to your calendar if you really want to tackle this bucket list Thanksgiving tradition. Maybe on its way there, though, is the Eversource Hartford Marathon weekend. It is in fall. You do want to, of course, know that this registration can also go a little bit quicker. It's a little bit more accessible than major lottery races, but those New England hotels, in leaf peeping season, they are no joke. So you want to book those early. And then during Labor Day weekend, you can check out the Faxon Law New Haven Road Race. as it has all distances during that weekend. So definitely a great one if you want to tackle a bit of a road race, but really don't want to commit to a full half or even beyond while they are in Connecticut during Labor Day weekend. If you are heading to Connecticut, giving yourself an opportunity to lace up and tackle some of those riverfront paths in Hartford or shoreline routes near Mystic, or if you're like me and you want to find maybe a sleepy little town like Stars Hollow for all my Gilmore Girl fans that want to cross that off their list. Okay, my friends, we are making our way to Delaware. Whew, it is a tiny little state, but it also has the lowest average elevation of any of our states, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't know that I would have personally thought of Delaware as being the flattest, but hey, just so that you are aware though, while it is flat, it does not mean that it's going to be easy walk in the park when you tackle this particular state, because there is some humidity to take into account. And of course, usually with that coastal weather, there could be some wind. However, while Delaware is a small state in this episode, it is the perfect reminder that good things come in small packages and you definitely don't want to skip it. It does have some really great, phenomenal literature and some great writing as well. We're going to kick off the literature with the book of The Unknown Americans. That is going to be your literary anchor. It is set in Newark, Delaware, and it follows families from Latin America who arrive with hope, grief, work needs, medical needs, and a desire to make home in a new place. The multiple voices make it an incredibly book club friendly because every reader is going to likely connect to a very different perspective. Making our way to book number 2 on this list is The Saint of Lost Things. It gives you Wilmington's Italian-American community, family memory, migration, secrets, and a more intimate historical lens. It's a chance to go deeper than some other obvious picks. And then Sunburn by Laura Lippman is our thriller noir option. It takes place in the Delaware beach town. It gives you secrets. It gives you seduction, mistakes, and maybe a little off-season coastal atmosphere. This is the one you want to pack if you're reading on a beach weekend, but want something with a little bit more teeth than like the typical summer romance. For races, we have the Delaware Running Festival. It's that easy city weekend choice. There's multiple distances. It's Wilmington, manageable logistics, and Rehoboth Beach Seashore Marathon is your coastal December option, where flat can still mean wind, rain, and weather, but it still also gives you that beautiful opportunity to tackle all that gorgeous scenery while you're getting in your miles. And last but certainly not least is Caesar Rodney Half. It is a local tradition choice. It's a little less well known, definitely though has some great road race credibility, so you could check that one off your list as well. My particular choice for Delaware would be Sunburn and Rehoboth, a beach town noir followed by a beach town half. That sounds like a perfect combination, a little bit of peanut butter and jelly, if you will. Or would it be, I don't know, what? Oysters? Like what's the combination for those coastal towns? Okay, my friends, again, we are counting our way through this list and we have made it to the weird, the wild, the WTF, what the Florida. It's going on down here. Well, with my friend, let's get started with Florida. Of course, I clearly have a little bit of experience here. We do know Florida is not hilly. Florida is definitely, though, a weather state. It's got its problems, but it's got heat and humidity. There's storms. Actually, there's an incredible thunderstorm going on right now as I record this. There's definitely sun, and it'll probably be here in just 30 minutes after the storm is done. But also, it just has a belief that running with costumes can solve at least 40% of your problems. I mean, that's kind of like a Florida thing, right? So let's talk about the books that you should definitely have on your list. Again, really tough for me because there's a lot of books that I've read set in Florida that I absolutely love and I'm called to. But I do think the classic, The Anchor, that is a must. Their Eyes Were Watching God. It is absolutely something that if you have not read should go on your must read. Zora Neale Hurston tells Janie Crawford's story through Edenville, the Everglades. Love, labor, community, desire, language, and self-determination is all bundled up in between the covers of this book. It is Florida literature at its most essential. It definitely does not touch on the theme parks, not the beaches, but truly a Black woman's voice claiming the right to tell her own life. It also should be known that there some trigger warnings, so be mindful of the content if potentially it is something that could throw you off a little bit there. But I still think it's worthwhile. Next on the list is Bad Monkey by Carl Hiaasen, which is a popular counterweight. It is a Florida crime comedy. A disgraced detective, a severed arm, corrupt housing development, which I think there is a lot of, and it features the Keys, Miami, a cast of people who care about each other, but lots of bad choices kind of ensue. It did become an Apple TV Plus series with Vince Vaughn. Actually, what I suggest beyond just reading this is go find the interview with the author. He does such a deep dive in speaking. He was an investigative journalist, so he just has some really great perspectives on South Florida, and he is a Floridian at heart, so it's just fascinating to me. Definitely a must read, and I would say it's definitely a very good watch. It's a little bit more of a fun, silly watch if you're going to check out Bad Monkey on Apple TV. But speaking about weird and wild, you gotta have Swamplandia. It helps you to have that Florida weird vibe, a little bit of that WTF. It is a family-run alligator wrestling theme park based on a fictional Florida island, though we have probably some things that really resemble all of it. Of course, grief takes over. The book does become funny, sad, strange, magical, and very human in its spirit. Now, I know it's not for everyone. I also know Florida ain't for everybody, my friend. But it is if you like something a little quirky, a little different, a little unique. I think this book is unforgettable. As we make our way to the must-do races here in Florida, almost impossible for me. Truly, I went through the list so many times because I just argued with myself, trying not to let my personal preferences come into play. But I am going to double down on the top of the list is the Disney World Marathon weekend. Yes, I know. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I do love Run Disney, but the Disney World Marathon weekend is just such a different vibe that should be experienced by everyone, whether you're tackling the 5K, you're there for the full, or maybe you're tackling a little bit of goofy or dopey. It definitely has its own really interesting aspect to it. The costumes, the characters, the medals, and those crazy, crazy early mornings. I'm kind of curious now that I think about it. Does it win the award for the earliest morning marathon? I'm going to look into that. I'll get back to you. If you already know that answer, you get back to me and leave me a voicemail. But the fun is truly real. You do need to plan ahead. As you know, Run Disney race registrations are no joke. So you have to keep that on your calendar, be very mindful of that, or go the charity route if you don't want to have all of that nonsense of trying to see if you can actually score that registration. Next on this list is Gasparilla. Making your way down I-4. I know you're going to say that that I have too much preference in Central Florida, but Gasparilla does give you a completely different vibe that Walt Disney does. It's truly an opportunity to have multiple distances, multiple different challenges, not quite the registration nightmare that comes along with Run Disney. It also gives you a great glimpse into our local running community. But what I think is super cool is that it's pirate themed. The entire weekend is pirate themed. It is truly a pirate party from start to finish. So I definitely would add that to the list if maybe Disney races are not on your bucket list or your must-do card. A little bit different, but making our way up into the northern part of Florida, Gate River Run in Jacksonville. It is a serious Florida road race. It is a 15K, which I love because it's long enough to be interesting, short enough to still make you question every single pacing decision. And the Heart Bridge, affectionately called the Green Monster, it gives this particular race its signature bite that kind of reminds you that here in Florida, you know, we're weird, we're quirky, we're wild, but we still pack a punch. I would definitely add that. See, this is where I struggle so much. I'm just going to throw it out there, and you can't You can't judge me for it. I think if you've been dabbing your toe or dipping your toe into the ultra world, the Keys 100 may be a place to do that with as well. From Key Largo to Key West, 100 miles. There are some relay options. There's heat, there's sun. You can have some cruise. There's a lot of sleep deprivation. I do think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to run through the Florida Keys. Now, just a little tidbit here of Florida. The reason why we didn't take the flattest, lowest elevation is because we have a whole whopping highest natural point in the Panhandle, Britton Hill. It is 345 feet above sea level. So see, this is how we get our hill training in. You think I can train for Pikes Peak there? I don't think so. All right, my friend. My personal pick, you already heard what I'm all about. I'm going to say Bad Monkey. And not because I love Bad Bunny, but Bad Monkey is just such a good Florida book. And I'm thinking you should pair it with Gasparilla, just because it gives you more of that Florida, old Florida vibe. All right, my friends, we are almost through this list here. We have just one more state here, and we are going to wrap it up with Georgia. Now, this is a state that can change its personality in the space of a long weekend and depending where part of the state you are at. What I love is that you can run among Savannah's moss-draped squares, or you can take an Atlanta skyline on the Beltline, or you can head over to the Silver Comet Trail, or point your shoes toward North Georgia and let the hills make the decisions for you. But Georgia does hold some serious major city running culture. It has some coastlines, it has mountains, it has a little bit of everything. So let's get started into their literary history. For our iconic pick, we have The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Now, you know, this is not a light read. It should come with honest reminder that it has some pretty deep topics in here of domestic abuse, racism, and grief, but it's also a landmark novel for a reason. And through Salie's letters, Walker lets us see a rural Georgia world shaped by cruelty and constraint while refusing to let those forces have the final word. The novel won the 1983 Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and it has lived many lives in popular culture, but the 1985 Steven Spielberg film, the Broadway musical, and the 2023 musical film adaptation. If you want a book that gives you something to talk about long after the final page, this is your Georgia must read. Now, for something maybe a little bit more of a contemporary choosing, I would go with American Marriage by Atlanta-born author Taveri Jones. It begins with a couple, Celestial and Roy, whose marriage is shattered when Roy is wrongly convicted of a crime he did not commit. The book moves us through Atlanta. There's letters and loyalty, there's resentment, and the impossible question of what marriage owes us when the world has already taken so much from us. It was an Oprah's Book Club selection and won the Women's Prize for Fiction, but do not let the accolades make it sound like it's a homework read. It is really readable. It is very emotionally direct. And it's also perfect for a group conversation since it tackles so many important topics. Now, the wild card, one of my favorite books, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Now, I do want you to know that there is a narrative nonfiction. It's not necessarily a novel, but it's also one of those type of things where the truth is stranger than fiction at times. Barrett, the author, tells the story of Savannah antique dealer James Williams and the shooting death that led to his trials. But the bigger draw is Savannah itself. I mean, Savannah just has its own personality, and he definitely does a beautiful job of showing it through its wealth, the eccentricity, the architecture, gossip, performance, and of course, those weird little social unspoken rules. The book became a massive bestseller, and in 1997, Clint Eastwood decided to make it a film. It is the pick for anyone who wants a read that practically hands you a weekend itinerary, and it indeed does. I would say read the book, go follow all the places that they talk about in the book, and you'll have yourself a perfect weekend. For races, you can't have this conversation without automatically adding in Peachtree Road Race. I think it rivals BOLDERBoulder as one of the most well-known 10Ks, and it is kicking off for this 250th year of the United States. It's 4th of July 10K party in Atlanta. It is the world's largest 10K, and it truly is an American running tradition. It starts at Lenox Square and it finishes in Piedmont Park. And I have a couple of you that I know are going to be running it this weekend as well. You get to meet Cardiac Hill. There are humidities, there's crowds, and there's a lot of citywide big race energy to keep you going. Now, we do know it's a hard one to get into, so if you're thinking you want to lock this one in, expect to utilize all the methodologies available to you, maybe joining the Atlanta Track Club, the ATC, looking at charities, or seeing how else you can really snag your 10K as it comes up. Of course, still in Atlanta, I'm going to say you should definitely run the Publix Atlanta Marathon weekend. It is the Urban Georgia Marathon Choice, typically held in late winter or early spring, when, of course, the weather is kinder to runners than it is in July. So it does give you a whole little different vibe, but it's still got rolling terrain. It still has weather that you can't 100% count on. And it still has a course that does require you to have some logistical planning. So you're going to want to get started planning on that a little earlier than most. I can't have a podcast episode and talk about the book, The Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and not have you make your way down to Savannah for a race. So we're going to go to the coast there in Savannah for the Savannah Bridge Run. This is a race for people who want a finish line story and a bridge climb in the same sentence. The event uses the Talmadge Memorial Bridge for a Savannah road race experience with river views, city charm, and again, a course that will feature you absolutely feeling it in your calves. It's generally in December, which makes it a smart combination of cooler running temperatures and that holiday season festivity of Savannah. So trust me, it is a must do. If you are making your way to Georgia and you aren't going to run any of these races, though I don't understand why you wouldn't, I would say the Beltline in Atlanta is definitely going to be one of the places that you will want to see. The Silver Comet Trail for longer paved mileage, or make your way over to Savannah for a little loop through Forsyth Park in those historic squares. Or if you're feeling a little sprightly and you want to hit up the mountains, go for it, my friend. There's tons to see there. I'm going to say that, again, you already heard, your pairing is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and you got to tackle a Savannah Bridge Run. It just goes hand in hand perfectly. Okay, my friend, we have, as I mentioned, we covered courtroom classics, we've covered fried tomatoes, wild Alaska, and very serious mountain 5K, desert stories, canyon trails, Arkansas grit, California's impossible to choose favorites, of course, Colorado altitude, Connecticut road race, Delaware beach towns, and Florida, and all of its weird, sparkly, strange glory, Georgia, and we have so much more in store. I'd love to hear from you. Choosing your adventure. Which book do you think you have to add to your list? Which book did I miss? And what race are you going to absolutely add to the top of your must-runcation list? With that said, I'd love to see you back here again next Wednesday as we head from Hawaii through Maryland. We have a little bit of island history. We're going to get into some potato marathon energy, even tackle a little bit of Chicago and beyond. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, I would love if you would leave a review or share with a friend that you know is also all about that running, reading, and racing life. Until next week, I want you to read something that moves you, move in a way that feels good to you, and keep making your life extraordinary. One stride, one story, and definitely one slightly overly ambitious runcation plan at a time. See you then.